Okay, this is ventilator circuit change. Now it doesn't matter which ventilator you're doing, this is a general procedure. And as always, this is the procedure that I deem the safest and not necessarily, quote, the fastest, but this is the safest procedure. Now before I change the circuit, okay, as always, when I go into the room, I want to make sure I have my manual resuscitator with the PEEP valve, the PEEP set to whatever PEEP is on here. Okay, so I check that out. I want to make sure I have a mask in case the patient becomes extubated, and of course I always pressure check them, always. Okay, especially in the circuit change, this is really, really important to have your resuscitator ready. Okay, and make sure that it's hooked up to the oxygen source and it's where you can reach it. Okay, sometimes people have it stashed way on the shelf or way in the back, and you have an emergency, you got to be able to reach it right now. So make sure you have your manual resuscitator ready to go, okay, for the circuit change. Okay. The next thing I do is the same thing I always do. I would check my heart rate, my blood pressure, my saturation. Okay, it's not on that machine, but if it was, I would check those three things there. And my ventilator settings, as always. In this case, this is the PBA 40. In case you have the readings across the top here. Okay. And these are the settings. So I cannot go with what the settings are. This is just what it's set at. If I want to see what I'm really getting, then I need to look at the top. V, TE, tidal volume, exhale, etc. Okay, so I look at the tidal volume, I look at the rate, and I look at the peak airway pressure. It's the same. Okay, notice this one doesn't have an analog or a needle like the 7200. So I would need to see this number here. Okay. Now the next thing that I want to do is I would want to get my circuit. My circuit will come in a bag, and I have my patient Y. I will not put the suction catheter on yet. I would change the circuit and then put the catheter in. One less worry, one less connection. Okay? And then I would have my two ends. And what I would suggest you do is that you hold everything in one hand. Okay, I'm real big on the way you hold things. So you hold it down by the Y. Put the ends here like this. The reason being, this is supposed to be sterile. If I'm touching anything, this tubing, it doesn't matter if this tubing touches anything. You can touch anything you want. You can even touch the floor. It does not matter. It's not going to be attached to the patient. These are the ends that I want to keep clean. So, I would then want to, quote, oxygenate my patient, just like anything else. I'm going to hyperoxygenate my patient, turn it on, give it so many seconds. The other thing I would suggest you do is that you loosen all the connections first, so you make sure you can get them off. Nothing more embarrassing than there's one connection that can't come off and you're in the middle of a circuit change. Now the idea here with the circuit change is to keep your patient, okay, on the ventilator and ventilating as long as possible. You want to miss as few breaths as possible. So when you change the tubing, it should be really, really, really quick. So you want to get all these things done before you change it. So you get it all lined up. There'll be a humidifier here. There isn't one on here, but there would be a humidifier. Okay. Get it all ready. Get all the connections ready. Okay. Loosen everything up. You've oxygenated your patient one last time now. Peak airway pressure, tidal volume. Look over there at the heart rate, the blood pressure, and then the saturation. When that's ready, I would say, Mr. Smith, I'm going to change the circuit. Now, when you go to change the circuit, it does not matter where you start, but I always believe it's best to start and disconnect your patient first. Why? Because then you can grab your manual resuscitator and put it on and not worry about which tubing goes where, etc., etc. I always think about the patient first. So I disconnect from the patient first. Okay? And then I would disconnect from here, disconnect from here. Okay? And then you would simply reconnect the tubing, okay, on your machine. Rehook your patient, okay, and immediately at that point, I'm going to look over at my heart rate, my blood pressure, my saturation. My peak airway pressure now is the same, and my tidal volume is the same, so that I know there's no leaks in the circuit. Okay. Now, if there was a leak in the circuit, if the tidal volume had fallen, the peak airway pressure was down, okay, my heart monitor becomes my best friend. If it's stable, or it was before, that gives me a few minutes to check the connection. Maybe there's a connection loose, I didn't have it connected. If I look over there and the patient's desaturating, his blood pressure's falling, his heart rate, he's become bradycardic or super tachycardic, then I don't have the time, then what would I do? I would disconnect here and grab my resuscitator and start bagging with the resuscitator. Okay, so your heart rate, your heart monitor is going to be your best friend in the intensive care unit. Heart monitor, blood pressure, saturation. If any of those are falling, don't waste time here. Get your man a resuscitator and start bagging. If it's stable, then you have a moment to check all your connections. Once you know everything is set here, then you would simply take off the tubing. Okay. Now be careful. This is going to be full of water. The last thing you want to do is put it all over the floor. So once again, you want to hold it with the end. This is why I'm real big on holding the ends. When you hold the ends, the water is not going to drip all over everything. Okay. Then you would put this in the hazardous waste. Get rid of it. Okay. And then at that point, okay, you would connect back in now, you would connect in your suction. Okay. And checking your heart rate, your blood pressure, your saturation.